Remember these fish? I've kept a fish tank for the last 3 or 4 years and got this one just over a year ago. I haven't really done anything with this tank aside from populate it with 2 angelfish, 4 tetras, with sadly only 2 remaining, and 2 plecos or plecos, depending on how you want to pronounce that, for algae maintenance. One of the easiest ways to obtain a fish tank is to buy a tank and stand combo, which you can get on sale for a very reasonable price. I think this was about $200 for the tank stand and hood, which I'd consider a pretty good price for a 38-gallon bow front. But these tanks always come with absolutely terrible lighting. The light that came with this is a simple fluorescent fixture that locks into the hood here. It's not bad, but the tube it came with was a weirdly neutral color that made it look like the fish are living in an office. Anyway, aside from making the fish look like they should be getting back to work, the light output is also poor. I'd like to be able to grow plants in here, but that's not going to happen with this single tube. I do have 2 plants in here that are tolerating what little sunlight they get through the west-facing window in this room, but in the dead of winter, they're starting to look a little sad. So, time to upgrade the lighting. And I'm going to do it using some 10-watt LED chips, drivers, and heat sinks. Why do it this way? Well, in the aquarium world, there is often a desire to use point sources of light rather than a linear source like an LED tape or fluorescent tube. See, a linear light source doesn't produce many shadows, and it also makes a very flat light. You've likely noticed this in a pool. When you're underwater, the surface of the water bends the light rays of the sun and creates a distinctive shimmer on the bottom. But with overcast skies, that shimmer goes away. To reproduce that effect in a fish tank requires point light sources. Metal halide light fixtures are common for this effect, but these would be total overkill for a tank this small. But the LED chips are small enough that they might reproduce this effect. Let's find out. Thanks to the wondrous thing called eBay, you can buy, straight from China, LED chips and drivers of dubious quality. These 10-watt chips and drivers for use on 12 volts can be had for about $2 a pair, assuming you buy 5 at a time. And thanks to an idea I'm pretty sure I got from Julian Eilert, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, these can be attached to small fan-assisted heat sinks, also from China. Those also go for about $2 a piece, though you usually have to buy 10 or so. Links are down below. Firstly, the LEDs need to be attached to their heat sinks. The most correct way to do this would be to drill small holes in the heat sink, tap them, and then screw the chip onto the heat sink with a bit of thermal compound in between. But the fan can make that tricky with clearance issues, and combined with my laziness, I sought alternate options. I have 2 which seem to work fine. First is thermal glue, essentially heatsink compound mixed into a bonding adhesive. This works fine, but is annoying to apply with my specific heatsinks because you need to clamp the LED chip in place while the glue dries, which takes quite a while, and to clamp it without damaging it requires removing the fan, which then makes it weird to clamp to. So for my next trip, I tried thermal adhesive tape. The smart viewers will note that this is totally not optimal and I'm probably shortening the life of the chips. I completely agree. But as I'm not bothered by this given the low cost of the chips, consider me a guinea pig. I did perform an array of wildly non-scientific tests, such as running the chips without the fan to see how hot the heatsink gets, and placing my fingers on the chip whilst running to gauge how hot the chip's surface got, hardly, and decided, good enough. After removing the fluorescent tube, its holder and ballast, I needed to find a way to hold these components in with reasonable security. I ended up using long toggle bolts spanning the distance, and using cable ties to secure the heat sinks to the bolts at their corners. For extra strength and to prevent vibration from moving them about over time, I used some epoxy resin. Each of these modules needs both an unregulated 12-volt supply to drive the fan as well as the output from a driver to run the LED. I decided to mount the drivers remotely, using epoxy resin to secure them to one of these extra tiles I inherited from the previous owner of my home. Hopefully this also helps remove heat from the drivers. Lastly, this needed to be hooked up to a suitable power supply. 12-volt power bricks are getting cheap and common thanks to LED tape, and I have a few extras lying around. This 5-amp unit should be capable of driving these just fine. And that's it! Here's the finished product. This is a great upgrade for any aquarium and only cost about $30, assuming you have some parts lying around. It's much cheaper than buying a dedicated LED lighting solution. Plus, many dedicated LED lights use a linear arrangement of smaller chips, which diminishes the shimmer you see. I should be able to grow modest plants in here with the light output of these chips. And most importantly, the tank is a much more pleasant sight. The only significant downside is that the fans do add some noise. This is the tank running without the fan lights. And now with the lights. but that's a small price to pay, I think, for a very nice effect. Lastly, for those who might be inspired to start a fish tank, I thought I'd be Mr. Responsible and chime in about that process. Starting a fish tank takes weeks. You cannot rush it. A responsible pet store will tell you that, but the big box stores, they won't. They just want to sell you fish. The tank needs to go through a process called cycling, which builds the bacteria that can process the ammonia the fish excrete as waste. If you just buy a tank and throw some fish in it, they will almost certainly die within a week because their waste ammonia builds up fast. I've put a pretty good guide to tank cycling in the description. A fish tank is pretty easy to maintain, but you have to be patient when starting it. Rushing the process is not good. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, the first video falling under Technology Connections projects. I'm limited on time this week, so I couldn't make one of my more in-depth videos. Next week, we'll finally be looking at the rise of DVD and the fall of Laserdisc, so stay tuned for that. As always, I need to thank my supporters on Patreon. Patrons of this channel are keeping it possible through voluntary contributions. If you'd like to help out, check out my Patreon page through the link on your screen or down below in the description. Thanks for your consideration, and I'll see you next time.